Hello, Rose.
Hey Sam, today we're talking about self-care. So care for yourself means care for the residents and care for the family. It makes us all better healthcare providers, I reckon. And actually part of our registration is to commit to taking care of ourselves, isn't it? So I've heard a couple of things about this topic, and one of them is put your own oxygen mask on first. You know, in the planes when they have they talk about taking care of kids. You can't take care of other people unless you've taken care of yourself first. And I've heard someone else say something like, "Oh, you can't pour from an empty cup." Um, and I think that's really true, especially in healthcare when you're caring for others. You know, it takes a lot. It takes a lot out of us, and we do need to pay a lot of attention to filling ourselves up in whatever form that looks like. Now, sometimes 5 minutes can be enough, but it's a bit like pain. Self-care is anything the person says it is, and it's anything that just fills you up, I reckon.
Absolutely. I completely agree, Rose. And I just wanted to say thank you for putting me onto a podcast that I heard recently. It is the one that is interviewed by Mia Friedman, and it is When Sleep Is Not Enough, the Seven Types of Rest. And I'll make sure that we put the link in the show notes so that you guys can have a little listen if you want to. But I never knew, I'm like much like yourself, I've been hearing a lot of stuff about self-care, but I've never heard this concept of the seven types of rest before, but I really, really liked it. I liked that, and I'll list the seven types just briefly while we're chatting, but I really liked that the seven types of rest almost fits into that sort of palliative care, holistic model of care, that we're looking not only at our physical rest, because sometimes like the podcast says, sleep is just you get all that sleep that you feel like you need and you're still feeling really drained and
Yeah.
tired. Um, so the seven types of rest that they talk about in the podcast are physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, creative, sensory, and
Mm.
social. And I just loved that breakdown. I was particularly interested in the fact that in the podcast that they said that healthcare workers in particular need that emotional rest because of the care that they provide every single day for other people, that checking in on our emotional well-being and the rest that we need emotionally and spiritually really helps us with our resilience and reduce the
Mm.
chances of burnout in the healthcare profession.
I think it's really important to mention that because um, a lot of the time, nurses are predominantly women, often caregivers at home as well. And
Yeah.
if we're not actually being, look, if we don't have that clarity that, I need some space away from all this emotional sort of giving that I give. I do it at work and then I come home and everybody's wanting a piece of me as well. Um,
Yes,
to give
yeah.
yourself permission to take that time for emotional rest as well as all the other parts. But yeah, really love that podcast. It was so helpful, I think,
I
because it.
think the fact that the lady that wrote the theory behind this is a medical doctor herself, and so she understands the medical field and also the sort of how much of ourselves that we give when we
Mm,
care for people. And I think that this is even more important or more pertinent in a palliative care space where you really are having to give the entirety of yourself to this space so that you're keeping the other person safe in
mm,
that time of need for them
mm,
as well. So we have to just make sure that we look after ourselves and each other
mm,
around it.
mm.
Um, and
That's true
it's
because palliative care is very like we holistic approach to care, which means
yeah.
we have to bring all of ourselves to it to do it well.
Yeah, definitely. And I liked that the lists of things that she gave as examples are sometimes like actions, but sometimes even just things that we can do, like checking in with our emotions. Because what we don't want to do is just be looking into self-care and creating this huge to-do list for ourselves to increase onto the burden of what we already have. And I think sometimes we fall into the trap maybe by social media or like in the things around us of thinking that self-care is something we have to buy or add to our already overflowing to-do list.
Yeah.
And I heard something that really resonated with me from a social worker I work with. And she says, for everything that you say yes to, you're essentially saying no to something else. So choose the things that you say yes to. Say yes to the things that fill you up, and therefore say no to the things that deplete you. And I really liked that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think too, I know through the pandemic, there was a lot of focus on self-care and you think, oh God, self-care. And like you say, it can become this, oh, that's something else I have to fit into my day. So I think,
Yes,
listening to this podcast can be really helpful to sort of see how you can get that rest. And
I
the other
think so.
the other thing I listened to also was a talk by someone who said sometimes self-care is receiving care from somebody else. Like we shouldn't have to do it all ourselves. I know most of us are Wonder Women, but sometimes we need to have a community of people around us so that we can receive care and not always be, proactively getting it from somewhere.
Yeah.
So
It
build
makes
a
us
little,
authentic practitioners, doesn't it?
yeah,
How are we expecting the people we care for to accept our care if we cannot accept
yeah. And to,
that
to
the
build it in,
care? Yeah,
find a couple of people to have an agreement with to sort of say, I'll look after you if you look after me, sort of thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then there's also a lot of other resources out there too that we need to really be letting you guys know about, which is the LDAC self-care room. That's a really big and amazing one. I always love going into the LDAC self-care room and having a look at the really usable snippets of information. And it's peer-led too. So other aged care workers inform what goes into that space, which is great. And we'll add that to the show notes as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think our 5 minutes must be up by now, Sam.
we could we could talk for hours, but we will we will stop chatting now. But thanks so much for your time, Rose.
Thanks, Sam. See ya.
Bye.
So we hope you've learned something today. If you have any questions, we encourage you to look further at some of the resources listed in the description for this video.
You can go onto the HRPCC website for more help, and you can call or email either of us if you want to have a chat.